Superman Unlimited issue 1, Dan Slott writing with RAFAEL ALBUQUERQUE on the art. So, the first chunk of this, I remember us actually theorizing last week when we got that Free Comic Book Day issue, or a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was, that, this feels weird that this is the Free Comic Book Day thing, because, like, how do you read issue 1 after this without having read this? Turns out it was just the first 10 or 12 pages of issue 1. That said, if you did already read it, one, that was free, so it's not a big deal, but they actually, this is an oversized issue 1 though, so there's actually still a full issue's worth of pages after what you already read in that Free Comic Day special, so there's still a full meal here, as it were, in terms of value, I suppose, but it is a little strange, just because it's something you've already read some of, if you'd read the Free Comic Day thing.
Yeah, I messaged Pete last night because I started reading this, and I was like, oh, remember we were talking? The first half is just the Free Comic Book Day. So,
Yeah. But like I said, there's still like 20 pages after the Free Comic Book Day stuff. So the ending of that, just for anyone who's forgotten, was there's a giant meteor of some kind or whatever, but the shell breaks off and it's actually a big ball of kryptonite coming towards Earth, and that was the big cliffhanger at the end of the special. So once we go on from there, it's basically just Superman having to, like, grit his teeth and try and push it and change its directory, because if he doesn't, it's going to hit Rio de Janeiro, right? Because he can actually sense where it's going to go. So he's like, shit, I need to move this out of the way. And I have to admit, like, see when he first starts, like, having his life flash before his eyes, and we get Jor-El and Lara and Krypton exploding, I was sort of thinking to myself, I can almost hear the pearls hit the alley ground, because we're doing the beats of the origin yet again. But I will say,
and they're using the same shot list too. Like, just change it up a little bit, guys.
Yeah,
that's all.
It's. Do you know the funny thing is I was being a little bit moody and critical about it as it was starting, but it kept going, right? They do a full kind of like life of Superman up until this point recap. It very much exists for someone who's not read Superman in a long time to be able to pick this up and get a full recap of what the current continuity of Superman is. And it goes through the fact that we're doing Superboy stuff again in Smallville, and it's going through kind of his first encounters with Lois and Lex and all that stuff, the first time he encounters Kryptonite. It goes through all the highlights of his life, going to the Fortress for the first time, all that stuff, and even obviously gets to the point where he's got John as a son and all the rest of it. So, I mean, I didn't hate it, because I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting to see what the current continuity is and sort of clean some of that up. That said, though, there is a couple things that I do have a little bit of an issue with. One thing's not new or surprise. I've made it very clear that I'm not super fond of him being Superboy when he's a kid before he becomes Superman. I think it diminishes from when he becomes Superman. But there's a little knock-on effect of that I didn't think about until this issue brought it up, which is that Lois didn't name him anymore, because the name just evolved from Superboy, so Lois didn't name him Superman, and I don't like that. That sucks.
They can still have it that she's the first one to call him Superman, though, right?
I mean, the way they presented it here did not imply that, because you see, like, the first time that they've got Superman in the headlines, and it sounds like Clark wrote the article, so I don't think she did name him.
That stinks. I didn't think about that.
Because she even compliments him and sort of jokes about how, oh, you got this big story because you realised this was Superboy from Smallville grown up. So.
Oh yeah, I didn't like that either.
Yeah.
I read this right before I went to bed last night, so some of it got memory hold. Yeah. Also, him writing the article about the first appearance of Superman is kind of unethical to me. It's dark. All right. This isn't Spider-Man taking pictures, right? Peter Parker taking pictures of Spider-Man to make the rent. This is him going, oh, hey, look. Although he did tell Jimmy where to stand so Jimmy could get the picture,
That's something. Yeah, that's the one thing of the current continuity, aside from the Superboy stuff itself, that I'm not super into. But it is kind of nice seeing him bring up, like, you know, all the various beats of the life, meeting the Justice League and fighting Doomsday. Also, it does clarify as well is that after he fought Doomsday, or specifically after he came back from death, if you will, that's when all of his memories of visiting the future came back. He specifically points out, oh, that's when all the memories of the Legion of Superheroes and all that stuff came back. So it's like, okay, it's fine. I mean, he does mention that before then, he did have this overall sense of that he was destined for something important, and he kind of interprets that as he could, like, somehow subconsciously remember that he's going to be important from the future, but whatever. Like,
yeah, so because he talks about when he goes off to the Legion of Superheroes to the, you know, to the 30th century, that Saturn Girl had put blocks in his memory, but there's one thing that kept showing through, and that was the Superman statue of the eagle. They get of him with the eagle. It gets put up. They call it the Centennial statue after he, you know, quote, dies fighting Doomsday. So I do like that. That was just a piece of something that was in his memory. You know, and then once he comes back from the Doomsday and he sees it, it unlocks that memory. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I wonder if we'll get some more of that kind of thing going forward.
Where are you getting this idea that he could remember that image the entire time?
So when he talks about, you know, he goes, "Was that supposed to be me?" Right? He goes, "Yeah." So sometimes in my future, I get an eagle, and then when it gets through, then he sees the Centennial statue. He's erected. He goes, "I remember it all now. I never did get that eagle."
Yeah. So what part? Yeah, but what part of that implies he could remember this image of the statue the entire time?
It's just the way that he was going about the memories. That's how I read it. Was that there was something there, like you were talking about, you know, but he couldn't put his finger on, but it was seeing that statue that.
Yeah, the statue triggers the memories, but I don't think he could see something that entire time. I think it was just a sort of sense of importance that he could feel the entire time.
Right.
That's what I'm picking you up on, because I don't think that the book implied that he could see that throughout. But this is the sort of murky thing. Joe, there's the problem with this conversation, though, is that all of this is just putting stitches over plot to explain why the whole Superboy thing's possible, because otherwise all this visiting the Legion stuff is just a complete mess that doesn't work. So we have to patch it all up to say that he doesn't remember it. So we have to fix it. It creates all these plot problems that we have to fix with this. This is comic books at their most messy, I guess, I'll say.
Yes. Well, and that's why the people that don't like continuity is for this messiness, right? But there's a reason why when Wade brought the Legion back in 2004 with the 3-boot Legion, he got rid of the Superman visiting aspect of it, right? They used the idea of Superman to fulfill the Legion, you know? And I think even Wade knew at that time that's why. Because, you start picking on this thread and it starts to unravel the sweater. So,
okay,
and someone that likes the Legion, what's up?
Yeah, but why is he the one bringing this all back then? Because he's the one doing it in Action Comics.
I know. That's the funny thing. I don't understand. You know, because even he was back then, maybe he was told he couldn't, right? Maybe he was told the 3-boot had to be in its own thing. I don't know. But yeah, even as a Legion fan, it is a bit murky and a bit irritating for all of this, you know?
So, yeah. So,
I also, what?
Nah, you go, Matt.
I was gonna say just also the idea of this big meteorite that had it's kryptonite, but it had that metal that they end up using for time stuff. I kind of like that idea. That's kind of what's triggering this memory. Like, not actually in the story, but in here in the comic, I kind of like that idea that it's this metal that's going to be used in the future is kind of what we're using to go back and tell Superman's origin. You know, so it doesn't feel as just like Superman, this is your life. It's flashing before his eyes. You know, and then you tie back the Legion and all that other stuff. So Slott's trying something. I don't know if he's necessarily executing it well, but yeah, it's very messy.
No, I mean, I think I have no problem with the way this is written, and it flows well enough. It's just there's no way to judge what this book is yet, because this first issue is just a recap of who Superman is, and I mean the way it's phrased, like the wording is all fine. Albuquerque's art is pretty solid. There is a couple of Justice League members who look a bit weird in his art style, but it's just kind of like clash of like who they are and his art style, rather than his art not being good.
I think Hot Girl looks really cool, and I think Flash looks really weird.
Yeah, Flash looks weird. That was the one that stuck out to me.
Yeah. Batman looks good though.
So the big thing here is that he changes the trajectory of the big kryptonite meteor, but realizes that it's going to hit a couple of fishermen. So he's like, "Oh no, I have to like go back in. I have to try and rechange it again." And he genuinely thinks he's going to die. And this is the part of the book that I think is genuinely quite good. Is that he basically thinks that he thinks he's going to die, and he decides to try and basically just say something to Jonathan in hopes that Jonathan can hear him, because he's the only one that maybe could. And well, other than Kara, I guess, I suppose. But he's going to speak to his son. Right. It makes sense. So he says, "Hey, say this to your mother for me," so on and so on. And there's a touch at the end where he basically starts quoting Jor-El from Superman the movie, which I thought was a really interesting. Oh, but obviously he swaps out Kal-El for Jonathan. He says they can be good people, Jonathan, if you let them. I was like, okay, that's a nice little tug on the old nostalgia strings. I can't really be mad at it. But he wakes up on the watchtower. It's been about 3 weeks, or was it months or weeks?
3 months.
3 months. So he's been out for 3 months in a coma. Everyone's happy to see him. Jean Jones has been pretending to be him, so no one was wondering where Clark is.
I was so concerned with that, because you just see him walk through with Pa, and I was like, why is Clark Kent standing there? And then when the reveal was Manhunter, I was like, oh yeah, there's probably a better explanation than they split or whatever at the Impact. I was very worried for a hot second.
But yeah. We're doing that in Supergirl right now. We can't be doing that in one of the Superman books as well.
Right, that's why I got concerned. I'm like, what are we doing? But yeah, it's just John.
Yeah. So everyone, Justice League are all sort of welcoming him back. They're all happy to see him. I do kind of love that Batman is just straight to business. He's like, there's something you need to see. Like, he's not saying, oh, I'm glad you're back up, Clark. I'm glad you feel better. There's something you have to see right now. So basically what's happened in these months since he's been asleep is that this kryptonite meteor's hit, and it's become like a resource on Earth, and people are like trading in it, and there's a city that's completely now built out of kryptonite. And then Connor and Supergirl show up, and they're kind of beaten and bruised, and he's like, wait, what happened to you guys? He's like, this is kind of the new normal. Like, everyone's got kryptonite. Everyone can get their hands on it now. It's kind of rough out there. And then the ending, which they kind of imply, and they don't actually explain it in this last page. They just kind of like turn on a light, and he looks all kind of gold or whatever. But the implication... He looks like the
Centennial statue.
Oh, sure. The implication, though, is that he is now immune to kryptonite. At least that's how I read this. Is that something that happened with being buried by this meteor has, at least for the time being, made him immune to kryptonite, which is an interesting pivot I didn't see coming, because because I think we vaguely heard, oh, kryptonite's going to be this big resource that everyone's trading in now. I think that was like one of the few things we heard about the book before it launched. You obviously assume a lot of things about how that'll affect Superman, but to sort of turn around and say that he's, for some reason, whatever the reason is going to be, is now immune, at least for a while, it's like, okay, well, that's strange, but all right, sure.
Yeah. So the island that has all this kryptonite buildings and whatnot, that was the small little area that he was trying to save the fishermen in. So likely this landed there, right? And they were able just to mine out of the sea all the kryptonite. That said, making your buildings out of kryptonite, we all saw what it did to Lex in the 90s. Right? That stuff's poison. So y'all, maybe these guys are on ticking clocks here.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was...
Honestly, Matt, I'm of two minds. Either that'll get addressed in plot, because that's going to be a part of it, or it's going to be conveniently forgotten about that it eventually causes cancer. I mean, which way will it go? Who knows?
Yeah. But yeah, just the idea that there's a city of kryptonite sitting there, and they're trading in it, and now it's a resource, and, it can only affect, it only has one, like, kryptonite really only has one use, and that's to take out Superman and the Kryptonians.
Well,
right. So now that
not necessarily. I mean, I think the whole point of this story is going to be that they'll have found other uses for it, and that's why everyone's wanting to buy it.
Maybe, but I don't know.
Maybe it's a really maybe it's a really good like conductor or something. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know. I just feel like if any of these groups, want to have an just in case a super ever goes rogue. I feel like it has a lot of value there in that. And I can also see Lex being upset because now that was his resource. That was his, corner. And I have this little island nation.
I'm not disputing that lots of people, either because they're bad or because they just want to plan for the worst, want kryptonite. I'm saying that the fact that there's a city built out of it implies to me that they are finding other uses for it. At the very least, they say it is like a status symbol, kind of like building like something out of gold, where it's like, hey, I built something out of kryptonite. Look at how fancy and rich I am. Like, at the very least, I think that's going to be a factor. If not, there's something unique property-wise that makes it good for something other than just hurting Kryptonians. But
I mean, you got to think though too, if they use the Sunstone logic, right? Like we saw the Sunstone with him in the flashback or in the Superman This Is Your Life aspect of the fortress. If you look at some of these buildings and zoom in on them, they kind of have that Kryptonian architecture. So maybe they did unlock something in that, right? Because it looks like there's some of those symbols and stuff written on the buildings. So
what if there was something inside the big ball? Like, what if it wasn't just solid kryptonite all the way through? What if there was like some other technology inside? Because I mean, it had like a shell that was kind of disguising it in the first place,
right?
So maybe there's more to it inside as well.
So him turning gold here at the end and looking like the statue, I thought was very funny because we made a big deal about the statue being this thing that kind of reminded him of his importance to the world, and now at the end of the issue, he's glowing gold. And it's like, well, what does this mean exactly? Did he just, absorb, like, what did he absorb to turn him like this?
Well, it's almost like there was like a defense mechanism built into his body or something where he was confronted with so much kryptonite that this was the only way he'd survive. So it like, if this was absolute Superman, I'd say it was Saul that did it. That Saul initiated some kind of anti-kryptonite defense. But obviously he doesn't have that, so I don't know.
Yeah. Because even Batman says, 3 months ago, a mountain of kryptonite fell on you. You should have been poisoned, crushed, and atomized. This is how you survived. And me and Clark both at the same time said, what? So a good cliffhanger.
Yeah, I will say, like, I feel it's obviously very inconsistent however they write how Kryptonians get hurt by kryptonite. Because I feel like, in my head, when I think of a Kryptonian getting hit by kryptonite, or hurt by kryptonite rather, it tends to be something where they're in pain when it's present, but once it's gone, they're fine. So this idea that Connor's in a sling because kryptonite somehow broke his arm for like a period of time is kind of weird to me.
Well, if you use it as it weakened him, right, and someone was able to break his arm because he was in a weakened state, but however, his body should have healed. You're right.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, Connor's also half human. So he doesn't have the full genetics.
Fine, but why does Kara have like a nose thing on?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe she's exfoliating. Maybe it's one of those nose things. Or breathe right strip. She's having some, breathing issues. We don't know.
Like, I will say this. I think the elements that it's doing here in this story so far, as much as it's hard to judge it yet, because most of this issue was just like a big recap of current continuity, I think I like these concepts way more than anything that Williamson's doing in Superman. So, at the very least, I'm kind of curious about where this is going. It's not let me down yet, so... And I feel like anything I didn't like about the continuity being changed is actually more to do with like what Wade's doing in action, and this is just kind of making it all fit together.
Yeah, I'm going to give Slott some credit for trying to make everything work as concisely. Because I feel like now that we did this, we don't have to worry about all that stuff. Right? He can just tell the story about the kryptonite and how it's influenced Earth and the culture and, how it's going to be dangerous to be a Kryptonian now. Right? Because now it seems like kryptonite's everywhere. Right? So you have to keep watching your backs, and it doesn't make them as super as they used to be. So I like that. And if we're going to keep going on with that, that's good.
Yeah. All right, what are you rating Superman Unlimited?
7.5.
Yeah, I actually have to go with a straight 7 on this. I think it's a fine enough issue. I think it's definitely a very easy issue 1, and that it is very much designed not just for people who read comic books, but I think you could hand this issue 1 to someone who's never read a comic book, and it would be an onboarding place for Superman, like for those people. Like, I kind of get it because there's a movie about to come out, and this is actually perfect to hand to someone who's never read a Superman comic before. So I can't really fault the logic behind it, and I think it's well enough written. Any faults I really have with it are just that there's maybe not enough meat in it, because, you know, to someone who knows a lot of this already, and to some of the things that they've changed continuity wise I don't love. But it's not really Slott's fault in this case. It's just kind of what they're doing broadly at Superman that I don't like.
Something we kind of skimmed over though too is the reason that Clark came to the Daily Planet is because of the stories Lois was writing when he was this mysterious figure, right? So he wanted to go there because, you know, it seemed like he had respect for her covering him. So I do like that thing, that thing there.
Yeah, that's not like that. I mean, maybe the way he phrases it a little bit new, but that's birthright, right? That's like, oh, he's, you know, while he's training and, you know, growing up, he's helping people, and Lois is writing stories about this mysterious. It's birthright.
Yeah, I love that. Birthright's my favorite Superman story, so that's right up that alley. But I do like that they, you know, at least he goes to the Daily Planet for that reason. So, but yeah, we'll see where Slott goes. But so far, I have no issues with you know where the story's headed.
I'm intrigued. I'm at the very least intrigued. Once he starts getting into the meat of the story, though, let's see what he does with it and see where we're going.